on, get back in the bus. Now look, I know how this must sound, but that man is crazy. He's been trying to kill me. I mean it.
Well, I tell you, if I had to vote on who's crazy around here, it'd be you.
I don't know. All I did was pass this stupid rig a couple of times, and he goes flying off the deep end. He has to be crazy. Okay, so he's crazy. What can I do about it?
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Flicks Files. I'm very nervous making this video today, and I'm going to explain why. I've been making YouTube videos now for about 5 months, and there is a core set of films that I adore more than any others. So that obviously includes the top 15 movies that I talked about in my very first video. But I obviously have a collection of films as well that didn't quite make the top 15, but I could easily do, say, a top 50. And up till now, I've never talked about any of those movies, either in the top 15 or what my top 50 would be. And for good reason, because I wanted to do them justice, and I felt that I would hang off talking about any of those movies until I got more comfortable in front of the camera and my editing skills got a bit better and just were making slightly better videos than what I was doing very early on when I started this channel. So I feel the time has arrived for me to pick one of the movies from this collection, my gold collection, should we call it, and talk about it. And the movie that I'm going to talk about today is a film called DUEL, which was directed, it was the very first feature film directed by a very young Steven Spielberg. And the other cool thing with this movie, which occurred to me when I started to think about it and what I was going to talk about in this video, was I think this is my earliest movie memory, because it would have been shown on television, I'm guessing at some point in the first half of the 1970s. It was made for American television initially, and the movie was what they call a movie of the week, and I think it was on the ABC television network in America. They had a movie of the week.
Dennis Weaver.
Okay, Jack, I've had it. Why? Why is he doing this?
DUEL.
And at that point, Steven Spielberg was a television director. He was making episodes of various shows like Columbo is the one that immediately comes to mind. And I read that he was sitting at his desk one day in his office, and his secretary threw a copy of Playboy magazine on his desk. And in there was a short story written by Richard Matheson about a guy that's driving to work, and he gets accosted by a truck driver that sets out to try and kill him. And Steven Spielberg read this and absolutely loved it. And I think he pitched it to the studio of making it a movie of the week. And at that point, he'd only been doing TV series. And he realized that this would be a good springboard for him to get into doing films. And he showed them the rough cut of the Columbo episode that he was working on at that time. And they agreed to give him a shot and let him have a go at making this TV movie. And I think at that point, the schedule was 10 days. Can you imagine 10 days? And he went for it. And I think at this point, he was 23, I want to say, which is still an incredibly young age for such a fantastic way to start. I mean, DUEL is a fantastic movie. What I'm saying is it's part of my gold collection. And he was 23, I think, when he did it. I mean, when I was 23, I don't think I even passed my driving test at that point. I didn't even have a car. And here he is directing his first movie. So, yeah, he ended up going out into the California desert and shot this movie. And I think he went over budget by 3 days. So, still, they made this movie in 13 days. It's just incredible to think about it when you watch it. And I think this is my earliest movie memory. So, when I think back of watching films when I was very little, I have a vivid memory of watching this with my dad and remembering the little red car that the protagonist drives in this movie, the little Plymouth Valiant, and seeing that red car and being very scared for him because he's being chased by this very evil looking truck. And my dad adored this movie. So very much I want to kind of dedicate this video to my dad, because whenever I watch this movie, I think of my dad, because he loved this movie. And he was a big fan of American movies that had car chases in. He always liked Smokey and the Bandit and things like that. And I think this must be my earliest memory of watching a movie, is seeing Duel on television. And it's a fantastic ride. And I have the 4K of it. I bought it on VHS back in the 80s, and then I had a Region 1 DVD of it. And then I bought the Blu-ray, and then I heard that the 4K was being released. So I thought, I've got to upgrade it. I don't upgrade every movie that I have on Blu-ray. It depends on what the movie is and how good the 4K is. So I pay close attention to the reviews before I put my hand in my wallet. But the 4K of Duel is lovely, and certainly the colors of the California desert, it just makes everything pop with vigor, and it looks amazing, the best it's ever looked. So I want to talk about it as a film. So as I say, they released it as a movie of the week, and I remember seeing an interview with George Lucas where he was at Zoetrope Studios with his filmmaking buddies like Francis Ford Coppola, and they had this on the television. They were watching it the night it was broadcast. And I remember George Lucas said that he mentioned to his friends, this guy, Steven Spielberg, we're going to have to watch out for him, because I've just watched this movie that is directed called Duel, and it was amazing. And he's a young up-and-comer, so we need to keep an eye on him. And when you think that he went from this to doing his next movie, which was called The Sugarland Express, which kind of went under the radar a little bit. And people that are fans of Steven Spielberg immediately think he went from Duel straight onto Jaws, but he didn't. Jaws was kind of his third movie. But my God, did Jaws put him on the map. And that is definitely one of my favorite movies of all time, probably in my top 3. And I love that. And I won't be making a video about that anytime soon. I think I need to feel even more confident before I talk about a movie of that caliber. So yeah, it was a 74-minute movie. And then the studio watched this and thought, this is actually damn good for a TV movie. We should try and release this theatrically in Europe. So they gave Spielberg some money to shoot some additional scenes to pad out the runtime and make it 90 minutes. And I know what a few of those scenes are. There's a scene where he's at a gas station at the beginning and he's on the phone to his wife. And there's another sequence where the truck's pushing him onto a railway track as a train's going by. They're 2 of the scenes that I definitely know they added on as extras. But anyway, let's talk about the movie. So it's very simplistic in its plot. And usually, whenever you talk about a movie and you say that, the movie ends up being great. It doesn't get overindulgent or overly complicated. The movie starts with the sound of the main character, David Mann, played by Dennis Weaver. And he's getting into his car and reversing out of his garage and down his driveway onto the road. And we treat it to a sequence of sort of low mounted camera shots of him driving out of California into the desert. And he's listening to the radio. So the soundtrack is just the radio stations that he's flicking through. And he ends up catching up behind this horrible looking tanker truck. And I looked up the model of the truck, before I recorded this video. And I knew it was a Peterbilt, but I didn't know the model, and apparently it's called a Peterbilt 281. And Spielberg tells a great story that when he was preparing to make the movie, for the car, he kind of said, well, I don't really care what the car is, as long as it's red. As long as it's a red car, because I thought red would make it stand out in the desert. So he said, I don't care what make it is, just make sure it's red. But when he came to the truck, they had what he called a casting call of trucks. And they had like 5 or 6 trucks all lined up. And he walked down this line and ended up picking the Peterbilt because he thought the front of the Peterbilt looked like a face, you know, with the headlights and the radiator grille. And the art department then dirtied it up, and every day they would rub oil on the side of it and swipe it with brushes to just grime it up and make it look really dirty. And it does, so this truck just looks horrible. And there's a big flammable sign on the back of it, so you just assume it's carrying diesel fuel or something. So David Mann, he's driving to an important meeting and he catches up behind this truck and he's belching out all of these horrible diesel smoke and he's coughing and spluttering. So he decides to overtake it the first chance he gets. And this he does. And he forgets all about it and doesn't think about it and continues on with his drive. And as he's enjoying listening to the radio, suddenly the truck comes thundering past him and pulls in front of him. And then its brake lights come on as if it's starting to slow down again. So you can see him thinking, oh, you know, what on earth's going on now? And so he decides to overtake it again. And as he overtakes it, the truck blasts its horn at him as if it's angry that it's overtaken him a second time. And that is the catalyst for the rest of the movie. So we have a driver of this truck who we never see. It's very clever in that way. We never see the driver. And obviously the driver has a beef against David Mann for overtaking him 2 times in a row. So they pull into a gas station. David Mann pulls into the gas station first. And as he sat in his car waiting for the attendant to wipe his windscreen and get all the bugs off the windshield, the truck pulls into the pump at the side of him. So he decides he's just going to sit in his car for a few moments and just watch to see if he can get a look at the driver. And all he sees of the driver is his boots as the driver gets out to the other side of the truck and he's walking along kicking his tires. So David Mann gets out of his car and the attendant has a look under his hood. And he tells him that, he says, it looks like he needs a new radiator hose. And David Mann kind of dismissively just goes, oh, we ever heard that before? You know, when he thinks that the attendant is trying to pull a fast one and make a quick sale. And it's a decision he's going to regret later in the movie. But for now, you kind of forget about that. And he goes into the laundrette that's part of the gas station and makes a call to his wife. And there's a little, as I say, this was one of the extra scenes, and there's a conversation between him and his wife where she's angry at him because she's complaining that they had a party or something the night before and one of the guests was making advancements towards her, and she's angry at him for not having stood up for her. So he tells her that he's going to hopefully be back and not too late. And she's saying, well, you better be because your mother's coming. You know, she's not coming to see me. I remember that she says.
You said there would be no problem about getting home on time.
There probably won't be.
Sure, Mother. God knows she's not coming to see me.
So he has this phone call with his wife that doesn't go too well. He gets back in his car and he drives off. And as he's continuing his journey, he looks in his rearview mirror and he sees that the the Peterbilt truck is coming up behind him again and driving up very close behind him. So he decides to wave it past, say, well, get past me if you want to go. And it does. And then it slows down again. So he then has to go for a very crazy maneuver where he decides to overtake the truck. Because what's happening is he's trying to overtake the truck, but the truck is swerving onto the other side of the road and just blocking him from doing so. So he realizes the driver at this point is playing a game with him, and he's getting cross, thinking, I'm going to be late for my meeting if I can't get past him. So to get past him, he sees a little lay-by at the side of the road that's kind of untarmacked, and it's all dirt and gravel. And he decides to go for it. So as they approach this lay-by, he guns his little car. And he guns his car and he flies into this lay-by, which gives him room to overtake the truck. And he manages to swerve back onto the road just in front of the truck. And he's like, yay! And he's really excited because he's kind of proving himself in his little fast car. And there's a bit where he goes, hee, and like waves at the truck as he sees it disappear in his rearview mirror. But that proves to be a very bad move because at this point, the driver of the truck has now got a real vendetta against him. And what precedes is probably one of my favorite moments in the movie is an extended chase where the truck is speeding up behind him. But rather than overtake him, it starts to bump into his back fender and it's sort of pushing him to go even faster. And it's clear that David Mann isn't used to driving fast for an extended period of time. So you can see him putting his foot down on the accelerator pedal and the speedo's increasing. And he's trying to go faster. And the truck is bearing down on him all the time, trying to force him off the road. And he's going faster and faster to the point where he's starting to lose control of his car. And he ends up seeing a road sign for a diner that's coming up ahead. And as he approaches the diner, he tries to slow down as best he can, and he loses control and ends up crashing into a fence across from this diner. And he gets out of the car, and a few of the patrons from the diner run across the road to see if he's okay, and he's got a bit of whiplash, I think he says. And he goes into the diner, and he orders a sandwich and asks for some aspirin because he has a headache. And he goes, and there's a tracking shot where he walks into the bathroom to throw some water on his face. And when he comes back out into the diner, through the window, he sees the truck has turned up at the diner and has parked up. So he realizes that the driver will be one of the patrons in the diner. And there's a great sequence where he's sat at his table and he's just closely watching all the people that are sat at the bar, and he's especially looking at their boots, and he's trying to remember the boots that he saw earlier and if he can pinpoint which one is the driver of the truck. And he ends up seeing a guy that sat all on his own at a little table eating a sandwich and drinking a beer. And foolishly, he assumes that he's the one. And he goes up to him and pushes him, and sort of says, I know what you're doing. If you don't stop, I'm going to call the police. And the guy's going, what? Well, what are you talking about? And he goes, don't tell me I'm bonkers. What you're doing is dangerous and you're trying to kill me. And they end up getting into a tussle. And the owner of the diner tells him that he's a troublemaker and that he's got to leave. So he's obviously got the wrong guy. And as he's then thinking, well, who is it? It must be somebody else that's in the bar. He hears the sound of the truck start up. So he dashes outside to try and speak to the driver, but the truck starts pulling away down the road. And he ends up running after the truck, and he obviously can't keep up with it. So he sets off on his journey again. And as he's driving down the road, he sees a school bus that's parked up at the side of the road, and all the kids are kind of hanging around at the side of the bus. And he realizes that the school bus has broken down. So he pulls up into the lay-by and he's talking to the driver, and the driver's saying, look, can you give me a shove? We try and get my bus started. And he's worried that his fender is going to get stuck under the back bumper stroke fender of the bus. But he gives it a go. And sure enough, as he's pushing this big bus, his car's not powerful enough to really move it. And he ends up getting his bumper jammed under the other bumper. So he's stuck. He can't go forwards or backwards, much to the dismay of the driver. And it's at that point that he looks down the road and he sees that the truck has reappeared and it's turned around and he's waiting for him in this tunnel. And there's this great shot where it's hiding in the darkness of the tunnel, and then we see the truck's lights come on. And he panicked, and he thinks, oh my God, I've got it. And at this point, he's telling the kids not to jump on the bonnet of his car because it'll dent it. But he suddenly gets so panicked that he ends up standing on his own car, and he's jumping up and down on the bonnet of his car to try and shake it loose, which they eventually do. And he gets in his car and screams off down the road and drives past the truck before it has a chance to turn round. And he watches in his rearview mirror and he sees that the truck has spun round slowly and done a big turn in the road and is pushing the bus back onto the road. So it's this bizarre moment where this evil truck driver that's setting out to kill David Mann is actually helping this busload of kids. And he drives down the road and he sees, I think this occurs before he arrives at the next petrol station, or it might be after. So apologies if I get the sequence slightly wrong, but he sees what he thinks is a police car parked up at the side of the road. So he quickly thinks, oh, great. And he starts to drive towards the police car. But as he gets nearer, he sees that it's actually a pest control car that has similar markings to a police car. So he realizes his mistake and just accelerates on. And a little Easter egg is that the name of the pest control company is Greebleps, it says, which is Spielberg spelled backwards. So he ends up pulling into another gas station that's ran by this old lady, and she has lots of snakes and various reptiles in cages. And as she's filling his car, he sees that there's a phone box, and he goes into the phone box to call the police. And there's a great moment where he's stood in this phone box and he's trying to say, there's a truck driver that's trying to kill me. And he's giving them his details. And behind him, we see the truck appear and it's driving straight towards him. And it really makes you think, oh my God. And he jumps out just at the last second as this truck just blasts into this phone box and completely destroys it into a million pieces. And it's smashing all of the containers that belong to the old lady at the gas station. So all of her reptiles and spiders start getting loose. And I think he gets a tarantula on his leg that he has to shake off. Now, there's an interesting little Easter egg again with this particular scene where, and I'll play the clip again and I'll show you in slow motion. When David Mann is in the phone box and he's talking to the police, you can see the reflection of Steven Spielberg in the glass, a very young Steven Spielberg. And he's looking down at his copy of the script. And I think he's got his sunglasses on, but it's definitely him. And yeah, and it's like a nice, cool little, usually things like that can take you out of a movie and ruin it a little bit. If you see a bit of a camera come in or the sound mic appear from the top of the camera. But having this reflection of Spielberg in that glass just is very nostalgic, and it just makes you think, oh yeah, this is Spielberg when he was really young, bless him. And he had all this energy and he could do a movie in 13 days. So it's a great moment. So he ends up getting in his car and driving off again. And this time the truck's obviously really out to kill him and things have got super serious. And we then get into what is the final big chase towards the end of the movie, where he's driving up a very steep incline. And he realizes that as the gradient of this hill of this mountain road gets steeper, he can gain distance on the truck because the truck will have to use a low gear. So he's driving up this road frantically and putting his foot to the floor. And suddenly we hear this like loud pop and a bang, and lots of smoke starts coming out of the bonnet of his car. And he realizes the bloody radiator hose that the gas station attendant earlier in the movie had pointed out has ruptured, and his car is overheating. So he's forced to slow right down, and he's crawling up this hill with a big cloud of smoke behind him. And he's looking in his rearview mirror, and you can see the truck in the distance that's also having to go in a low gear. And it's such a tense moment where you're thinking, come on, you know, and Dennis Weaver's acting in it, and he reaches a point of mania towards the end of the movie that fair drives the plot along.
Come on, let's go! Come on!
And he's trying to get to the brow of the mountain of this road, and he's pushing it, going, come on, come on. And eventually he gets over the brow and he puts it into neutral so he can just sort of freewheel the car down. And this he does. He puts it in neutral and just lets it roll under its own weight, and it begins to pick up speed. And in doing so, it's actually cooling the engine, all the air rushing through the engine. So he finally gets to the bottom of the mountain road and almost destroys his car by crashing it into this stone wall. And he drives up a disused kind of access road, which the truck follows him. And he realizes that the road is a dead end and it's just going to go off the edge of a cliff. So he whips his car around, and then he gets his briefcase that he's got in the back seat and he jams it between the driver's seat and the accelerator pedal, and then steers the car so it's directly driving towards the oncoming truck. And at the last moment before they impact, he jumps out of the car and rolls away to safety. And the truck smashes into the car, which explodes. And the truck driver realizes that he's getting near the edge of the cliff. So he's pulling all of the assisted brakes and doing his damnedest to try and stop the truck, but it's just too late. And the truck barrels over the edge of the cliff. And we get these glorious shots of the truck and its entire tanker just tipping over the edge of this cliff. And falling end over end down through this big cloud of dust. And I remember Spielberg saying in one of the documentaries about this movie that they had a number of cameras that filmed this truck going down this side of this mountain, but there was only one cameraman that got the entire shot of the truck going all the way down. And he said at one point you couldn't see the truck because of all the dust, but the cameraman kind of predicted where it would be and always had the camera in the right place as we see the truck tumbling down in slow motion. And a little Easter egg again is that the sound of the truck as it falls, Spielberg put in a cry of Godzilla from the original Japanese Godzilla movie. And you can clearly hear it as the truck's falling. And at the end of Jaws, when Roy Scheider shoots the gas canister that the shark has in its mouth and the shark explodes, there's a shot under the water of the corpse of the shark in a big plume of blood as it's slowly sinking. And Spielberg uses the same sound effect again of Godzilla. And he explained that he thought the shot it reminded him of the shot of the truck falling through the big cloud of dust. But now we have the shark's body falling through a cloud of blood. And he used the same sound effect, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. And that's the end of the movie. And we get a few shots of the dust settling on the wreckage of the truck and one of the tires as it slowly spins to a stop. And David Mann is sat there up on the edge of this cliff as the sun's setting. And he's finally got to the end of this horrific adventure with this truck. And it's just a fantastic movie. And that's why I've held off talking about it until now, because I didn't feel that I could do it justice. And hopefully I have talked about it in this video and I haven't mumbled along too much. And I hope I haven't got the sequence of events wrong. This is a problem when I talk about films the way I do, where I just do them from memory, because I feel it's more real doing it that way, rather than me watching it the day I'm recording this video and just refreshing myself to it. I'm giving you my memories of it, of all the times that I've watched it. And it's just a fantastic movie. And there's no reason why my dad always loved it so much. And again, this is one of those core gold group of movies where I've probably seen it, gosh, easily over 50, 60 times. It must be, because I probably watch it every year without realizing it. And I first saw it back in the 70s. And yeah, it's a fantastic movie. And it really showcases what a filmmaker, I mean, obviously now, 21st century, we look at Steven Spielberg's body of work and all of the films that he did, especially during the 70s and 80s. Some fantastic memories of cinema that he's produced for us all to enjoy. And this was his real, start of it end. This is the one that got him noticed. And to think this was a TV movie. And thank God the studio saw the promise of this film, and they decided to release it theatrically and extend the cut of it. Because you could watch this, and there's no way you would think this was a TV movie. You would think it was a very well-made action movie from the very early 70s, because that's exactly what it is. Wow, so there we go. I've really enjoyed talking about this film, and I'm going to enjoy putting in the clips of the bits that I talked about and try and include as much as I can and get around that bloody YouTube copyright issue, which is always a pain. So I hope you enjoyed this. And if by some miracle you haven't seen Duel, please get a copy from somewhere and watch it, and you will thank me, I'm sure. So there we go. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, maybe you could. It doesn't cost anything. Perhaps have a look at some of my older videos, and if you see more than one that you enjoy, then is that enough for a subscription? I don't know. So thank you for that. I upload every Friday, so I'll see you next week. Bye for now.